New hate speech laws on the way in Ireland. A bill making its way through the Oireachtas at the moment, though proving to be somewhat controversial. Ronan Mullan is an independent senator. He's with me now. Ronan, why is the hate speech bill controversial?
Because it's using the criminal law in a way that is destined to have a chilling effect on free speech, because it is extremely vague. It basically criminalises a person if they behave or if they communicate material that is likely to incite hatred, but there is a complete failure to define hatred. But it's really that taken with the fact that you have a whole raft of new protected categories of people who are protected from this kind of speech. And let's agree at the start, none of us has a problem with inciting to violence or material that would incite violence. This is about chilling people's natural freedom of speech. So when you have this dramatic new list of protected categories, leaving out others, and it includes, strangely and bizarrely, an amazing new definition of gender, which the government seems to have smuggled in without any proper discussion, landing us right in the middle of the culture wars, where the people who are, let's say a person is on the media and they're saying in robust terms that they don't want their child playing GAA, in girls GAA, with a biological male, and let's say they put that in pretty strong robust terms. Is there a possibility that they will be called haters on social media? Certainly, we see that already. Is there a possibility of a pylon saying, pointing to the Gardaí, saying this is hate speech? Possibly, because the Gardaí already operate a very low threshold for non-crime hate incidents. It's based on the perception of the person. So whether this comes to pass or not, it is simply unacceptable in a democracy that the criminal law would be used to try and educate people out of hateful attitudes. It's work that has to be done, but it should be done in our schools. It should be done in our communities. You do not have people wondering whether what they're saying is breaking the law or not. And the government has made a serious misstep on this, and they should get back to the drawing board.
Barry Ward, Fine Gael Senator, should they get back to the drawing board?
Well, there's a lot to unpack there. I love the way Ronan says that this is about educating people out of kind of hatred opinions. This should be done in our schools and our communities, but the reality is most of the people doing this are beyond school. They're so-called adults, and we know that they are targeting people in our communities, people who are different ethnically, people who are different racially, different religions, different nationality. These people are being targeted all the time. They aren't entitled to enjoy their lives at the moment because of the amount of hatred and violence that is aimed at them. Now, what this bill tries to do is to say that's not okay. It's not okay, and it's actually criminal to do it, because you are disturbing, and you talk about rights, Ronan, you're disturbing those people's constitutional right to enjoy their free time, their space, their workplace, the public realm in this country, and many of them can't do that. So when Ronan talks about, for example, impinging on free speech is not an absolute right. No constitutional right is. There's always a balance of rights. So free speech is already curtailed, for example, by the law on defamation. You cannot say whatever you want. And Ronan says that this is going to criminalise people because they're likely to incite hatred. And of course, that's not what it says. What it says is likely to incite hatred or violence, or they must also intend to do that. So the intention is that, and that is a very...
Or be reckless as to whether it happens. Now, don't misrepresent the law, Barry. It's very vague and it's very catch-all.
Hang on a second, Ronan. It's not. It's exactly the same way that this language is couched in other offences. We talk about intention to commit an offence or reckless as to whether or not
those offences don't target ordinary people who are exercising the freedom of speech. If Barry could name me a single example of the behaviour he thinks is going on at the moment that should be criminalised, I would probably be able to show you that it's already against the law, whether it's the public order legislation on threatening, abusive or insulting behaviour or obscene behaviour. You also have the 1989 legislation which already criminalises. What's happening here is that there is a vague new standard being brought in. The government has, I got the Irish Council for Civil Liberties to agree with me that this bill should not pass unless hatred is defined. You see, the criminal law... The criminal law is the extreme end of it. I would show, my point is this, the law is already there. The criminal law should not be used to try and put manners of people before they open their mouths. The criminal law to which Ronan is referring is the 1989 Incitement to Hatred Act, Prohibition on Incitement to Hatred Act, under which a total of 50 prosecutions have been taken since 1989. That act, of course, was passed before we had smartphones or the internet, for example, in everybody's home and everybody's pocket. So there's a huge need to update the legislation. Yes, and you want to demand people's passwords on the phones in case they
hold on, let Barry finish his point.
You also referred to the Public Order Act, which is a completely different thing. This is not about public order, because you and I both know that this kind of behaviour happens online without any risk of a breach of public order, which is required for Section 6, which you cited there. It's happening in Snapchat, it's happening on Twitter, it's happening on Instagram, it's happening on constant messaging between children, and it's not being addressed, and it's happening in an organised way at adult level by groups who want to undermine this protected.
Ronan, before you come back in, Barry, is it your contention then that this legislation is simply needed to bridge that gap created by the internet?
Not just that, but yes, that. But it's also required to address the fact that there are people in our society who are constantly the target of hatred.
No, I appreciate that. But the 1989 Act doesn't allow for prosecutions when this is on the internet, when it's made on Snapchat.
And information systems are defined in the Act within the bill.
But Barry has defined 100 different examples of bad behaviour, including children misbehaving on social media. And I presume he's not suggesting the children should be targeted by this legislation. The problem is it's all so desperately vague. We are all against anything that incites violence. The type of speech that Barry is talking about could easily be said to be speech that incites violence, and he wouldn't have any opposition if they confined it. It's the very vague idea.
Are you opposed to the Incitement to Hatred Act from 1989?
No. Nor am I opposed, by the way, to provisions in this legislation that prohibits condoning genocide and all sorts. I'm not a free speech absolutist. This is about getting the balance right, and our democracy needs to let people express their ideas. It's fine, as I've said before, for people like Barry and myself. We're politicians, we have privilege in the Shannon, we've probably got brass necks, we're able to defend ourselves. But it's the ordinary person who may not be the most polite when they express their worries or concerns, who may be even rude. Let's say a parent who's absolutely outraged that their child is being put in danger by having to play girls' sports with biological men. They are the very kind of person that could be targeted under this new legislation.
Barry,
you say the guards need to prosecute it. It's your responsibility. I'm finishing my point, Barry. It's your responsibility. You're in government. It's your responsibility to guarantee certainty in the criminal law. Citizens deserve no less than that. And you haven't given it to them here.
There's any uncertainty in this. What Ronan is talking about is people who take offence. This bill does not make it illegal to offend someone. People will continue to offend after this legislation is passed. What this bill is about is targeted hatred at specific groups relating to religion, nationality, ethnicity, sexual orientation, whatever it might be. We know that that's happening, and it goes way beyond offence. And it's not about robust comments about people playing on GAA teams. That's not what it's about. This is not about shutting down debate. It's about taking the hatred out of debate. It's about saying to people it's not okay to use a certain type of language which casts aspersions, casts hatred, and encourages other people to engage in that hatred against specific groups.
The problem is that when you define it so vaguely, what one person's robust freedom of expression is going to be some other campaigner's hatred. And that is, it's far from clear, because it says likely to incite hatred. You don't even define hatred in the legislation.
Well, Ronan,
this is sorry, Barry. Barry, this is a democracy, and the government is far too right wing on this. You have got to recognise that there will be people expressing ideas that we don't like, but when they endanger other people anyway, that's when the criminal law should be involved.
You referred to Section 6 of the Criminal Justice Public Order Act 1994, which is all about likely to cause a breach of the peace. So we already have that, but you actually cited that as an example of what is good law, and now you're saying that we use that likelihood in this bill that it's bad law. No. The reality is, Ronan, you don't like it because you think it's going to stop people from saying things that are not popular, but that's not what it's about. What it's about is not unpopular opinions, and there's no thought crime element to this. It's all about actions and intended actions and the consequences of those actions. And what it is about is saying to those people, yes, you can have that debate. Yes, you can put forth honestly held, forthright opinions that we don't like, but you can't express them in a way that does down certain sectors of the community and causes hatred against particular characteristics that are protected in the bill.
And what defines hatred?
Well, hatred is defined in Section 2, subsection 1, as hatred. It means hatred against a person or a group of persons in the state or elsewhere on account of their protected characteristics in any one of those characteristics, and the characteristics are set out in Section 3, subsection 1.
In other words, it's not defined.
We all know what hatred means.
Can you not admit that it's not defined?
Ronan knows very well that the Interpretation Act allows us to take the ordinary meaning of a word. Nobody's in any doubt about what this means.
Oh, sorry, I'm in huge doubt about what this means, and an awful lot of other people are as well.
Ronan's course of action is that if you give a really specific definition, then people will say, well, it's not technically within that definition. So even though what I did is in the ordinary sense is hateful, it's not covered by the definition.
Ronan, can I ask you a question? Do you think if we were to have this debate tomorrow, or not tomorrow, but after the passing of the legislation later in the year, were we to have a debate and discussion on this show about biological males playing Gaelic football on a women's team, that were you to come on and argue against it, that you'd be prosecuted?
Or any ordinary citizen. As I said, I think the danger is people shouldn't have to worry about whether they will have a knock on their door from the Gardaí. Bear in mind that when the guards apply the current standard of investigating non-crime hate incidents, it's based on the perception of the person.
But it's not the Garda definition. definition.
Sorry. When you have legislation then that doesn't define hatred and simply says you're in trouble if you utter something that's likely to incite hatred, it's basically left to courts, to juries. Why should a person in one of their most fundamental freedoms be subject to the uncertainty of that in the criminal law?
Okay.
Let me just be clear. Anything that would cause violence or injury or risk to any other person, I will be in the front of the queue and campaigning for it. But I stand for the democratic right of people. I don't think this government is interested in putting manners on people.
Okay.
And that's not a good attitude.
I started with Ronan. A final word to Barry.
The first thing is the Garda definition or the Garda perception of what constitutes hatred is not the test. Section 14 specifically requires the Director of Public Prosecutions to authorise any prosecution under this legislation.
Agreed,
so it's not
but
up
why
to the
should a
Garda.
person
I said a final word to
It's
Barry.
something that has to go back to the DPP, a professional organisation with no political affiliation and not banned by the Gardaí. They will decide under the definitions in each of the sections that creates an offence whether it is likely to cause hatred or violence and intended to so create or reckless, as you say. That's there, and those people carry out those decisions all day, every day, to the benefit of this society without criticism.
People want to
All right, no. I said a final word. I said a final word to Barry Ward, Fine Gael Senator, Independent Senator Ronan Mullan. Gentlemen, thank you both very much for joining me here on the show. I mean, I'd need to lie down after that.